and you look at every decision and you apply that aspect to it, this is what happens.
Okay, so I met this young gentleman very recently, and he's already had an impact on my life in a positive way.
He's gonna kill it.
Josh Kekac, and he's just going to talk to you guys for a while. So let's give him a hand.
I appreciate being here tonight. It's actually a pleasure to be here, and this place is actually important to me on a personal level. The last time I set foot in here, if you eradicate this weekend, was a little over 10 years ago, and I came here to see a friend of mine play guitar. Now, he was an amazing guitar player, and when he would play, you would just get enraptured in what it was that he was, in whatever it was that he was playing at the time. And this young man, as he grew, his heart grew. He was one of those very pure-hearted people who stood out amongst the crowd. A little over 10.5 years ago, this is one of the last times I ever saw him. Unfortunately, he has since passed away. And I remember coming down here, watching him play, and talking to him in the parking lot. The guy's name was Charlie Jones, and I wanted to dedicate what I'm going to say tonight to Charlie. So, a few days ago, I had a chance meeting that took place over at Common Bond, and the fellow that I ran into was named Robbie Steele, which is this fellow right here. Now, first off, Robbie Steele is probably one of the coolest names I've ever heard in my life. And if there's somebody else who's got a cooler name, I'd love to meet them. The thing that happened with Robbie is right off the bat, there was a mutual respect. And that's something that doesn't seem too common and typical around these areas nowadays. Now that mutual respect then turned into a conversation. And as we spoke to each other, we talked a little bit about life, a little bit about ideas, a little bit about our views of the world and our past. And we found some common ground. And in fact, we ended up having lunch together. And he had taken a liking to me, and we ended up talking a little bit, and he told me about this place to come down and possibly speak with you. My name is Joshua Kekac. I'm a life coach and aspiring motivational speaker. And I'm very thankful to have this time with you tonight. And I wanted to come down here and tell you a story. So for this story, I brought something with me, and it may not seem much to you yet, but it's an acorn. Now this acorn may seem insignificant, but see, contained within this acorn is absolutely limitless possibilities and limitless potential. In this acorn is a blueprint for a giant, majestic tree that can grow 80, 150 feet up in the air. But it grows from this: a dream, an idea, a goal. But see, what happens with potential, as much as we like to believe that the potential is what matters so much, everybody has potential. Everybody in this room has potential. Everybody in this world has potential. The problem is that potential, when not acted upon, is untapped, and it simply remains a dream that never comes to fruition. Now, for me personally, I look around the world and I see millions upon millions of people who have this potential, who have this acorn inside of themselves, and they do not pursue it for varying reasons. One of the most common is limiting beliefs, whether it's by skin color of what you were born into, or your finances, or whatever it is that you believe. But see, the interesting thing about beliefs is that beliefs are subject to change, because a belief is simply a fact you hold to be true until it's proven false. At one time, there were people in this room who believed that Santa existed. I don't want to break your bubble or anything. I see you smiling. I don't want to break your bubble, but Santa don't exist. Don't be getting mad at me. I could be wrong. He might be real. I don't know. You got to keep an open mind. But I don't believe he exists any longer, but there was a time where I would have fought you on that, and some of you in this room may have fought me that he did exist. Because that was a belief that you held to be true. Now, what if you held a belief to be true that was utterly and entirely false? But it was a belief that held you back in life and something that did not allow you to pursue your dreams or pursue your goals into an obtainable range. Well, you'd probably be like many, many other people struggling in this world and going through life in some form or another of stagnicity. Just kind of drifting along, whether it's working jobs you don't enjoy, or you're in a relationship that doesn't fulfill you, or whatever it is, you can paint the picture. So, how do you tap into that potential? How do you make that come to fruition? Now, for me personally, this is something that I work on every day. I want to know what is the difference between this person who becomes successful and this person who hates their life and never achieves what it is that they desire? What is the difference? And what I've found over my time is that the real difference, it is simply the state of the mind. It is your perception on life, because your perception is your reality, and to change your reality, you must change your perception. Now, how do you change that perception? So I'm going to tell you a story about the last few years of my life that have been very tumultuous, and I've learned many things. And it's what I bring to the table in terms of when I life coach my clients. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and such, but in my life I was blessed with a good family. We didn't have a lot of money. I had a father who worked extremely hard. I had a mother who loved me very much. And I had a safe place to call my home. When I was younger, I thought that what mattered in life was making enough money to buy anything that I wanted, and a woman by my side to spend life with. I thought those were the only two things that mattered to me, on top of family and friends and fun times and all that kinds of stuff. So what I did is I studied money, and I studied women. One of which I more or less figured out, the other ones I gave up. But when it came to money, I was very, very good at making money. I was very good at entrepreneurial endeavors. By the time I was 22, I was working at a place where I was making very, very good money. I had tens of thousands of dollars in the stock market. I could buy essentially anything that I wanted. And in fact, at the age of 22, I was looking at a Ferrari. It was a type of a Testarossa. Type of Ferrari named Testarossa. And I don't tell you these things to come across conceited at all. I just want to paint a picture for you of where I used to be. So 22 years old, I'm looking at this Ferrari to buy. Now if you fast forward to the end of that year, I was homeless. Which doesn't make too much sense because of where I had been. So what went wrong? Now, in the time that I was homeless, I was not homeless for very long. But in that time when I lived out of my car, my perspectives on life began to change. And I'll never forget, there was this one night, it was around Christmas, 22 years old, and I think I was parked outside of this girl's house who, there was a Christmas party going on, and I'm laying in the car, I'm absolutely drunk out of my mind, close to the bottom, not doing the best, and I'm laying there, and my head sideways, I'm just throwing up all over myself. It's funny now, at least to me, but it wasn't back then. And as I laid in that car and threw up all over myself, I was like, how the F did I end up here? And how do I get out of this? Because I wanted great things. My dreams were large. So, 2 years later, if you were to fast forward, 2 years from there, and by the way, it was all my decisions and all my mistakes that ended me in that car where I was at 22. It was no one else's fault but my own, and I think that's extremely important. We all need to take responsibility for our actions. But you fast forward 2 years, and I owned a business I made $87,000. I had all my bills paid. I had $20,000 something sitting on my desk. I had a house, 3 bedrooms, a pool table room, a entertainment center room, deck, backyard, 5 vehicles. Me, by myself. Because I thought that was what mattered. It was material wealth. It was the stuff that I had seen on TV. Don't get me wrong, I still want nice things. But you would have looked at me in that time and thought that I was doing really well. I had 2 Camaros. One of them was a drag racing car. I had a motorcycle that has won every single custom bike show I've ever been in. I had a quad and a truck. Could throw parties at the house. Could go out to the bars and buy whatever. And it felt amazing at times, but it was always fleeting because I was not balanced. I had parts of me that were missing, that had not grown. There was not a spiritual maturity. There was not a love. There was not a happiness aspect. It was simply money. So what ended up happening, again, I'm going to fast forward a little bit, my life ended up spinning into a complete and utter spiral where I lost control of almost everything in my life. Again, second time. And though I had built this business up from literally nothing, and I had no loans in it, and I had no anything like that, I couldn't hold on to it. And financially, I became ruined again. And I attracted the attention of some snakes who took advantage of my current situation, and they posed as mentors, and they posed as people who were going to help me for my business. Well, they destroyed my business, what was left of it, from the inside out, and then tried to take the place for themselves after it was ruined. Now, in this time, I fell into a deep spiral of depression, and what took place was I started making mistakes everywhere, with friends, with loved ones, with money decisions. I lost my house. I had to sell that drag racing car for a $14,700 loss. My other Camaro was broken at the time. I had crashed my motorcycle. My quad, I blew the engine. My truck was hanging on by a thread. And in fact, that thread was a sock because the gas tank had rotted so bad that the gas tank had snapped off the neck of it, and I had a sock and I tied it up by a sock. That's why my gas tank on my truck was held up. And the front radiator was held up by a bunch of zip ties, and God knows if the doors ever shut, and I had to, it was an interesting thing. So I lost the house, I lost the business. I ended up spiraling, and I ended up back at my folks' house, who had moved at the time, and they didn't have any room for me really at the house, so I ended up on a porch. I lived on a porch. It was enclosed, so it wasn't that bad, but the winters get pretty cold on a porch. And during this time, I sat there, absolutely miserable, and when I say that I was having dark thoughts, if you were to shut these lights off in this room and put a bowl upside down on the ground, I'd crawl underneath it, and whatever you think for a moment, use your imagination of what was going through my mind, I guarantee you are probably right. Could not find a reason to go forward. I couldn't find anything that made me feel happy or centered. But there was one interesting young man who had come into my life several months earlier that changed some things. This young man had seen something that I had done while I owned the business. I got invited to give a speech at a Seymour High School, and I went and I gave that speech. It's about an hour and a half. You can find it on my YouTube channel, which I'll give you guys at the end of this if you have any interest. But during that speech, I spoke to a crowd of entrepreneurial students. And what I said during that speech, and the knowledge of which I possessed during it, due to the situations I had found myself in life, The boy, a young man, 17-year-old, watched this speech on the YouTube channel. He was not part of the class. He was so touched by what I had to say, he reached out to me and he contacted me of who he believed at that time was a man who had his life together, who owned a business, who knew about success, wealth, and building something. And he had an idea for a business he wanted to build. The 17-year-old reached out to me. He wanted to take me out to lunch. And I keep his email at all times. I have it on me, in fact, currently on that phone. He took me out to lunch, and during these 3 hours, this boy picked my brain clean of everything that I thought I knew, but I had forgotten. See, what happened during that interaction, his questions and my guidance and him being blown away by what I actually knew about success management in your personal life reminded me of something. It reminded me of the greatness that lies within me that at that time had completely and utterly gone away. And we sat there and I began to realize that I had something worthwhile in my life because I couldn't find anything to move forward for. I couldn't find a future that I thought was worthwhile. I had fallen apart in many areas, and this kid is so impressed with me, and he has no idea I live on a porch. And that I'm driving around without insurance on my truck because I can't afford it. And that was an awesome, meal for him to take me out and eat. A funny thing happened with that young man. He took my advice and he ran with it. He had business cards by a week and a half later, and he had clients within a month. Now with these clients, one of them offered him $3,000. A 17-year-old kid was offered $3,000 within a month of not even having a business. How did that happen? It came from the knowledge of which I possessed that I had forgotten about. And see, the thing is in life, guys, we forget so much about ourselves. We forget what it is that we're capable of and where it is that we want to go, and the fact that we have every able means to get there. And we lose ourselves. What were you when you were a child? You said you wanted to be something. You said you wanted to grow into this. You wanted to do this. You wanted to be a firefighter, an astronaut, a policeman, and whatever it was. But a lot of us lose that. And see, when he reminded me of this, that was that tiny itty bitty glimmer of hope. When I was under that bowl in that complete and utter darkness and such, and it started to go through my mind because I could not figure out where I wanted to go. I have two sides to me. One of my sides is what you're essentially seeing now, which is, I'll call this the more business-oriented, professional side to me. And I excel at that side, but I get bored. And it just doesn't fulfill me. But then I have this wild side. The thing with the wild side, I like to stunt on motorcycles. I like to do a lot of things that are kind of risque. But when I go all the way into that lifestyle, I feel like I'm wasting my life. So how could I combine the two? And so I started thinking about it. I started thinking about a business to build. And I sat down and I thought of this thing that I had kind of made up to find your passion. What is it that you're actually passionate about? And what I actually thought about was this. 3 things. If there was no money, and there was no chance of being judged, or you had no fear of being judged, and you could not fail at whatever it was that you were pursuing, what is it that you would be doing? And see, for me, when I answer that question, what I would be doing is I would be traveling the world, speaking to people, motivating people, making people believe in themselves, be able to somehow make a living off of that, and change the world, be the change that I want to see in the world, enrich this world, because I look around me and there's a lot of negativity here. There's a lot of people who don't believe in themselves, nor have have been grown to be able to know how to take their dreams and bring them to reality. So I would be traveling around, but I would also have this side of me that would be able to, play on the toys and travel and ride the sand dunes and visit Las Vegas and visit Bora Bora and see blue water. I've never seen blue water in my life. I've always wanted to. So, how the hell do you combine that? And then I had this idea. And I said, let me start this YouTube channel. Let me start to try to build something. Let me just take a step, right? Martin Luther King said, you don't have to see the whole staircase, you just have to take the first step. That's how you end up somewhere else. Because that door, I can look at that door all day long, and I will never reach that door from here. Ever. But if I take a first step, and I take another step, and even if I get sidetracked and I come over here and stuff, but if I kind of make it towards that door, there's going to be a moment where that door is within my grasp, and I can reach out and grab it. And I will be able to open that door, regardless of what that represents in my life. So, I was still lost, but I had this thought of what I wanted to do. How the heck do you make that happen? So there was a night where I was sitting down and I had in my hand a baseball. And I was rolling this baseball around in my hands and I was thinking about it. I was thinking deep in thought. And as I stared at my hand, I realized that when I got lost in thought, I stopped moving the ball. Now when I stopped moving the ball, it sounds silly, but the ball stopped moving. Now that doesn't sound very profound, but if you think about it for a moment, this ball sitting within my hand was something that I had control over when I had felt that my life was so out of control. Now if this ball sitting in my hand I had control over, when I stopped moving it, it didn't move. What else did I have control over? And I began to use my imagination. I began to look at the objects around me, and I realized that I could move objects around me and manipulate my environment, which essentially is my reality, or the physical reality of which I was currently standing in, and I could change it. And I began to extend my imagination even further and say, what else is it that I have control over? Well, I have control over to go home and watch TV tonight, or I have control over to go home and edit this video and get this up online for people to see. Which one will further me towards my goals? Now, as I looked at that ball, I stopped moving it again, and as I looked at it, I used my imagination and I saw the world. I saw the earth sitting within my hands. And when I did that, I said, this is my world. So if indeed this was my world sitting within my hands, and I had complete and utter control over my hands and my decisions as to how to manipulate this world, could I change my reality into what it was that I desired? And so what I did is I purposely moved that ball. And I chose the direction of my hands to move that ball around my world. And when I did that, another thought came into my mind, which was a concept that I had heard, which goes like this. If you become utterly conscious of everything that you do in your life, every decision you make, and you put in your mind, just like that door, does this get me closer or further from my goal? And you look at every decision and you apply that aspect to it, this is what happens. Everything I drink, everything I eat, everywhere I go, everyone I speak with, the fact that I'm here tonight, and what I'm going to do with this footage, all of that, I can choose, does this get me closer or further from the goal? What I buy, do I need new shoes? It'd be nice. These aren't the nicest, they got a hole in the bottom and such, but do I need new shoes? No. I can put that money towards advertising. I can put that money through a new business card idea. I can use all of the attributes and resources around me to further what I'm looking to do. So, with these two things armed in mind, I started to build again, just like when I was in that car, homeless, several years earlier. I started to build. And I started to work on the YouTube channel. I started to build a business card. I started to build a Facebook following. I started to build. And there was a day where I got extremely negative again. And I was outside talking to my dog because, you know, it's a step up from, you know, crazy talking to yourself, so I might as well have a dog and pretend like, you know, we have some interaction going on. And I'm outside talking to my dog, standing next to a giant tree, and I heard a crunch because I took a step, I looked down, and I crushed some acorns. And I reached down and I picked up this acorn, this specific one, and I held it in my hand, and much like when I had held that ball in my hand, I became enraptured in the moment. It was as if I was seeing my hands in the acorn for the first time. It was very vivid. It was completely immersed in the moment. Now, the acorn of which I looked at, which is this one, I realized the blueprint for what this could achieve was standing in front of me, already developed. But see, that was 100,000 or 200,000% larger than what is in my hand. This is very insignificant if you really sit and think about it. Well, how does this get to the tree? How does this build and grow? And again, Martin Luther King. You don't have to see the whole staircase. You just take the next step. So I carry this acorn with me, and I sleep with it next to my bed, because I'm a freaking chipmunk, but I sleep with it next to my bed, and I look at it every night, because when I feel that I haven't done things good enough that day, or I haven't made enough progress in my life, I remind myself that as long as it's a little step, it doesn't have to be big, it gets me closer to where I want to go. So that includes when I go to bed and when I rise. So the thing is, guys, I want to come down here tonight and I want to introduce myself because I have this dream. And my dream is relatively simple, but I want to live in a world where there is imagination and there's people who bring their imaginations to light. There are people who believe in themselves. There's people who walk around with a foundation under their feet, their backs, their shoulders pulled back, their heads held high, and there's people who are empowered as opposed to so many people who are oppressed. I have a dream to travel the world and to speak with people and to make people and to grow together, not just by myself. I like to grow with them as well. Now personally, I know that this is just one story from my life, but I promise you I have a very diversified background. I've interacted with many different demographics of people, and I have insights to life from studying many of the great teachers throughout history, whether it's philosophical type stuff or Eastern philosophy or whatever it is. So I take that and I apply it to my clients who are having different difficulties in their life, whether it applies to health, wealth, love, happiness, or balance, which is something that I now possess nowadays. There's many times I'll just head off into the woods. In fact, I did it today because I need to be centered to come on here, come up here and speak to you people and just come out with this. See, because when you're centered, you're able to live in the moment, and you can get across the points of which you really want to, and your head doesn't swim when you try to speak. So today I spent, some time in the woods with the dog, and meditating on a rock. Because I got to tell you guys, some of the stuff that I said while I've been up here is nothing that I planned. It's just that I'm here in the moment now, and this is what I want to speak about. So, my thing is that as a life coach, I reach out to people in the community, and I just wanted to extend a hand to anybody here, or if you know of anybody who has goals, who has aspirations, who has dreams that they seem out of reach, because they're not. It doesn't matter if you want to be a motorcycle stuntman, a bodybuilder, you want to be a model, you want to own a salon, it doesn't matter what it is that you want to do. It is obtainable. It's just there are certain keys to life and a certain mind revolution that has to take place, because once the mind changes, the rest follows. So, what I'm saying, guys, is that I appreciate coming down here, and for me, to live in that world where I see that out there and to be able to talk with people and get them to realize that this exists in every single one of them, and to actually be able to take that potential in somebody and take that and cultivate that and make people believe in themselves to the point where their greatness exceeds even their own imaginations. Guys, that is something that if I can be a part of, then by golly, that's good enough for me. I thank you very much. My name is Josh Kekac. I'll be here if you need anything. Thank you, man.
All right, we're gonna get the, once again, what's your projection?
So,